we'll be looking at how to draw good diagrams. We'll be finding out what is the golden rule of three, the 4-step A system, more about time practice. Are there such things as model essays? How do you choose question? How do you introduce abbreviations or short forms? And lastly, handwriting. Okay, so what does VCR stand for? Obviously, it does not stand for the item on the bottom right hand side called video cassette recorder. No. Okay, but when we talk about diagrams, we are talking specifically three parameters. Pardon me. Okay, visibility, coherency, and recycle. And sometimes you will see, sorry, just now as you have seen in the plan, I have actually used one of this. Okay, recycle here. Okay, diagram recycle, if you can recall. Okay, and I will be touching more about that later. Okay, so this is two different, two same diagrams. Forgive me, sometimes I lose my thought for a while. Okay, so these two are exactly the same diagram. Okay, but the one on the right and the one on the left, what is the exact difference? Okay, you realize that the one on the right, okay, you can see changes in your price movement clearly, changes in your quantity clearly with clear shifts. Okay, but if you look on the left, okay, this will frustrate you. Why? Because you cannot see clearly. Okay, all these are actually squished together. Okay, so are you guilty of the left hand side? Okay, please forgive me. There is a typo here, GUILTY. Okay, so sometimes you see spelling mistake. It is not intentional because I type too fast. I have fat fingers. Okay. So there is always a constant struggle for students, all right? What happens is before they join me, they insist on drawing small and neat diagram, okay? Whereas the actual need is large and visible diagram, okay? Why is this so? Because your marker has not only one script, as I mentioned earlier, he has hundreds of scripts to mark. Okay, so if you have a very small diagram, what happens is he has to look into your diagram to find equilibrium change. Where is your equilibrium price? Where is your equilibrium output? And this is the last thing you want your marker to do, alright? You want to provide him with comfortability to read your essay. Okay, the more comfortable he is in reading your essay, the more marks you will get. Okay, the smaller your diagram is, the more you are going to frustrate him and you're going to get very low marks for that. Okay, so a rule of thumb, okay, is to have at least your diagram to be at least 1/4 page big. Okay, 1/4 page big. And whenever you have shifts, okay, make sure your shifts are visible as well. Okay, don't shift small. Don't shift very slight shifts. Okay, you cannot see price and output movement, output changes very clearly from such small shifts. So the shift has to be big as well. Okay, and Econs is the only diagram that you can flaunt your knowledge with a diagram. So make use of this advantage that you have. If you know how to draw a diagram, make this your advantage and make this differentiate yourself from the other candidates that are sitting for your A-level paper. Okay, so tip number one, okay, be visible. Keyword is V. Okay, make your diagram visible at least 1/4 page big. Alright. So the second problem that we have is coherency. Okay, so using the same diagram earlier on, okay, you have this following scenario. Okay, Singapore is facing a recession and tightening of COE. Okay, and let's assume that the previous diagram is talking about car market. Okay, diagram 1 is about car market, figure 1 in Singapore. Okay, so if you are new to my class, okay, or you haven't learned anything about diagram drawing, okay, for most students, what they will actually write is, okay, they will simply state, oh, this is a demand factor, okay, demand will fall. Oh, tightening of COE, okay, lesser cars on the road, supply will fall. Okay, lead to a fall in quantity and demanded rise in price. Okay, short and sweet. Is it good? Okay, remember, okay, your analysis has to be coherent with your diagram. So throughout this entire analysis, okay, there is zero reference to the diagram. Okay, and this is as good as a white elephant. Okay, why are you drawing a diagram? Since you're not going to relate it, might as well don't draw, right? Okay, keep your answer simple and short. Okay, but the fact is, okay, with such a short analysis, okay, this is not doing you any good because you have already invested time in drawing, okay, and you're not relating your answers to the diagram. So what's the point? Okay, so now let's look at what will you answer after learning the 4-step ACE method. Okay, so same thing, okay, referencing to the diagram is important. Okay, sometimes you may have more than one diagram, so you want to bring the marker to the correct diagram. So name your figure, name it diagram 1. Okay, I think it's diagram 1. Yes, figure 1. Okay, and reference to figure 1. This is very important. Okay, where the demand curve intersects supply curve, equilibrium price and output. Okay, and the explanations I shall then go on further. What I want to bring out is all this. Okay, your supply curve shifts left. Okay, quantity and equilibrium price. Okay, all these are visible in your answer scheme, or are visible in your diagram. Okay, so you want to show the markers systematically how is the adjustment process going by. Okay, not by simply telling them in a 3 sentence that, oh, demand for, supply also for. Yes, I also know how to write all this. Okay, but most importantly, you want to relate all these subscripts and references to your diagram. Okay, accompanied with economic concept and analysis. Okay, and that makes a good diagram and good essay. Okay, so the catch is good relevance to the diagram. You need to relate the diagram to your writing, and you need to use writing to explain the diagram. Okay, detailed explanation on the market mechanism, how it works. This is relevant to this question only. Referencing to the diagram, yes. Okay, you're referencing like your figure 1. Okay, so make sure you name your diagrams. Okay, specifically, if you don't call figure 1, you can call them, okay, car market in Singapore. Okay, so you can call it car market in Singapore. It's the same so long as they have a name for the diagram. And lastly, you need to have proper subscripts. Okay, and make sure that your subscripts are also consistent with what you are writing. So sometimes I see students, they draw different subscripts and they use different subscripts to explain what they have drawn. Okay, so they do not match. So make sure whatever you draw in your diagram, the subscripts DD0, DD1, okay, when you are writing, you don't have DD star, DD star prime. Okay, so this is something that you need to take note. Okay, so to sum it up, diagrams must be coherent, okay, and consistent with your analysis. And the last part, okay, I have actually mentioned earlier on in the plan, is to recycle diagram. Okay, so each diagram, okay, if you are good in drawing, you will take up to about 1 to 2 minutes to draw. If not, the longest you could draw is 3 minutes, depending on the complexity. Okay, if you take 5 minutes to draw a diagram, it simply means that you are not familiar with the diagram and you need to practice more. Okay, so a good diagram, 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, 3 minutes for slow drawers. Okay, so you know that for every essay, okay, you have 45 minutes. Okay, you are taking 3 precious minutes away. Okay, and the more diagrams you draw, okay, the lesser you have to answer. Okay, in the sense that, okay, you are effectively you have 40 writing minutes only, because you're using 5 minutes to plan. Okay, so 3 minutes out of 40 minutes is already quite a lot already. Okay, so if you have more than one diagram, you are going to take yourself more time away from actual writing. Okay, as a rule of thumb, okay, 1 diagram per part question. Okay, so if it consists of A and B, there should be two full diagrams. Okay, and if it is a 25-mark question, okay, 2 diagrams. All right. Okay, if you can recycle your diagram like what I mentioned early on in the market failure question. Okay, if you have drawn in part A already, okay, and part B, okay, requires you to implement a policy that, okay, so what happens is you can reference back to part A, okay, and just simply do whatever that you're required to for on the part A diagram. Okay, but there's one thing, okay, do not cross-reference across another question, okay, because your script, okay, there's a good chance that each question is marked by a different marker. Okay, so if you reference from question 5 to question 3, okay, question 5 is a macro question, question 3 is a micro question, okay, it is impossible because the marker of question 5 will not be able to access question 3. So this is something that you need to note, okay, but within part questions itself you can reference, okay, and if you have a chance to reference, please do so, okay, to save time in your answering. Okay, yeah, and I mentioned already, don't reference and recycle diagrams of other questions, okay, other part questions. Okay, so learn to reference properly. Okay, that is why you need to have a name like figure 1, figure 2. Okay, then you can reference properly, okay, and recycle all diagrams from same question. Okay, the next thing that you need to know is, if you do not have a diagram, don't force a diagram. I think I've mentioned that earlier, okay, but certain questions like public good, they don't have a diagram. Okay, if they don't have a diagram, they don't have a diagram. No need to force one. Okay, there's no happiness in a forced marriage lah. Okay.